We are talking countdown, 50 days to fucking college football.
It's like the 50 days of Christmas right here.
It cannot come fast enough.
No. That's not what she said. But I get it.
45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30. He's gonna go. Holy cow.
Big Red Junkies.
Day by day, he gets better and better. We get better and better. Team Oh man, woman and child, he just turned this stadium inside out.
We're super excited about this because we've been talking about this. I think we started talking about it around like right after the Iowa game. We were like, let's do something big for the countdown this year. Mm-hmm. So we're doing
last year we did 100, and that was aggressive.
Well, but we were also only doing like, here's a historic player and here's some little stats.
Yeah.
We're doing a little bit more fun this year with throwing out the video. These are the 50, what we think, and we pulled some, what do we pull? A total like 10 people?
Yeah.
Something like that. Of the most important people on the team, whether it be coaches, assistants, whatever, plus players, kind of a composite list of that put together, the top 50 most important people to count down for the 2024 season.
Yep.
There's a lot of people that missed that list by just a smidge, and a lot of, I was surprised just between, mine and your list, there was basically a 10-person separation. Some of it seems completely out of left field, and some of it's very much like, well, I don't know, I could have had him at number 2 or could have had him totally off the list.
Yeah.
Who the fuck knows? Some people didn't put Matt Rhule on the list just because they feel like it's like, okay, well, he's obviously that one's out there, but then to me it's also like, okay, cool, so is Dylan Raiola.
I personally did not have Rhule on my personal list just because he does.
Obviously.
But he's kind of more of the CEO type where he lets his coaches coach, lets his players play. So I was kind of more just valuing that more than anything else.
I totally get that. But I mean, I'm excited about it, but I do want to talk about some of those that did miss the list. I fought for it. We put Matt Rhule on the list.
That's fine. Yep.
But who's some of the dudes, I know you have the list in front of you, who didn't make it that were all close cuts?
So ultimately, there was, when I did the whole composite and everybody together, there was roughly, so we did a top 50. It was like 68-ish players.
Sounds about right.
Players and coaches that ended up making a list, one way or the other, somebody's list. So obviously we had to cut off, roughly 15 to 18 guys. But as far, so there was other guys too, but some of the ones that I thought were so close that, maybe should have made the list, probably made my list on some of these guys, but like wide receiver, just at the wide receiver position, guys like IGC, who's coming back from another injury, and Alex Bullock just missed the list. I think outside of the transfer guys that we have coming in at wide receiver, IGC and Alex Bullock are our two most experienced guys at wide receiver.
Even if IGC really hasn't seen the field in, 2 years?
Yeah.
Basically?
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, it's crazy to think about the fact that we're just like, oh, well, Nair only missed last season. Well, IGC really only missed last season, but plus the year before, and he's been on and off the team, and it's like, well.
Kind of the year before that and the year before that.
Well, he was a transfer prior. It's just, he has a ton of experience, but it's a distant memory.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's also why we haven't heard a lot about him in the spring. So
and when with the speed and the size that we have also at wide receiver with the young kids coming in, it kind of shines a bright light that casts shadows on other players like an Alex Bullock, like an IGC.
Yeah.
At the offensive line position, Justin Evans Jenkins, who played a lot for us last year.
That was what I specifically asked you about. I'm just like, I asked you, I was like, do you think he's not going to be the guard? Do you think it's Corcoran? You think it's going to be Corcoran?
Well, he's kind of fallen off, through as spring went on, he kind of stopped getting talked about it. Or when he was brought up, he's backing up Ben Scott. He was never really talked about switching the positions. I still think he's going to be a Swiss Army knife kind of guy. If there is an injury or if necessary, break glass type situation where you plug him in at guard if needed. But guys like Henry Litovsky started coming up a whole lot more as far as being talked about. at the guard position and everything else, like I kind of just think that Justin Evans-Jenkins is relegated back to just being the backup for Ben Scott.
Well, I mean, he's also a good backup.
He is.
And he's having that extra year of being on the second unit and being able to potentially come in if there is an injury to Ben Scott. Knock on wood, hopefully there's not. But, for looking at the future of him, if he's just patient and he stays at center and really truly has a full season backing up Ben Scott, he's going to see some game time. There's going to be garbage time out there that we're going to see offensive linemen rotate in. A lot of the younger guys are going to be able to get in there. The backups are going to be able to get in there. He's going to get his hands dirty this year. But if he gets a whole extra year of just center work, he's going to be a perfect plug-and-play guy next year when Ben Scott goes off to the NFL. And that's exciting.
Yeah.
Especially when you're looking at year 2 of Dylan Raiola.
In the large defensive back room that we'll get into when we talk about like Evan Cooper being on the list and things like that, Dwight Boodle and DeAndre Barnes has been talked about a lot as far as filling guys, especially with the injury to Bly Hill, as far as who's going to take up for that spot. Those two guys just barely missed the list.
The Bly Hill thing to me is still so weird because I feel like it's one of those unknowns. We've heard there's some people that are very credible that are saying, yeah, it's not as serious as they initially thought. So they're thinking it'll be late fall camp. He'll be back and he should be good to go by the time the season rolls around.
And some say he might miss the first month of the season.
Yeah, well, I heard it literally just today again. Oh, well, he's not going to be in there for the entirety of fall camp. He's basically going to start his fall camp ramping up at the beginning of the season, which is what Ty Robinson did. And he wasn't truly effective until like week 7 or 8. And so if you're talking about a guy who relies a lot on speed, who is already a newcomer, is he going to be that effective this year? If he's not going to be there, then that's a weird one for me. And I think that's kind of why we ended up leaving him off the list.
Yeah.
But that's a frustrating head scratcher to me that we aren't getting any answers on that.
Yeah. The last two guys that I have that just missed the list are both on special teams. One, he didn't do very good last year, but he's a very important piece to be able to do better, and that's Brian Buschini, the punter.
Oh, yeah.
We need him to be better than what he was last year.
Buschini.
And then the other guy.
The fact that he wasn't good last year was why he missed the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that there's a world where if he is as bad as he was through the first couple games this upcoming season, do you think there's a world where we see Coke get out there?
I don't see why not. If he's just as bad, give him a couple of punts. I mean,
why not?
What's the harm in it?
It's not like he hasn't been doing it probably since he was like 3 at Memorial Stadium.
Or
Raven Stadium. Yeah. I mean, he might or might not know a pretty good punter.
Yeah, he's okay.
He's got a good coach.
And then the last guy that just missed it, this is a guy that was definitely on my list because he's the guy that will be snapping Buschini the ball. Camden Witucky, the long snapper. He is taking the place of, I know, everybody likes to joke about the long snapper. Who the fuck cares? But it's good to not care about the long snapper because that says that he's doing a good job. Yeah. You don't want to know his name. You don't want to know Marco Ortiz's name from last year, who was one of the 3 finalists for the Patrick Maneely Award, which it goes out to the best long snapper of the year in college football. The fact that Marco Ortiz is now, I think, with the Colts. I think he signed a free agent deal with the Colts. Again, we're losing one of the best long snappers in the country that we didn't have to worry about. And now we're replacing him for not just the punting situation, but also the place kicking situation, which we will get to later on in the list with Tristan Alvano. That's a very key position that is being replaced this year.
Yeah. When you said his name, when you said the guy that's replacing him, I was like, yeah, I can't put him on the list if I don't know what his name is.
Yeah. Well, I'll be.
He's super important. You're right, but
to be fair, when I started doing my list in roughly February, end of January, February, when I started doing my list, I didn't know that we had like 3 or 4 long snappers on the roster. We only have this guy now, but
that was back when we had 170 kids on the roster too.
I didn't know who was going to be the long snapper. So literally on my list, I just put long snapper. So whoever
the fuck he is,
whoever it's going to be
in at 47,
it might actually be his name.
Yeah,
that'd be fantastic. Justin Long Snapper, get in here, Coach. I'm a safety. Doesn't mean you're protected. They don't hit you anyway. You're fine. Nah, man, is that everybody that's on that list?
That's all I have.
Yeah, the one that you brought up right before this, we were actually talking about our number 50 guy. But somebody that's under him and somebody that's super important is the head nutritionist.
Yeah.
What did you say?
I think her name is Kristen because I think they call her Miss Kristen.
Miss Kristen, yeah. It seems like she's definitely going to be. When you look at the body changes that we've seen a lot, like in the Hutmaker stuff and the body changes we're seeing a lot of the linemen especially go through. Prohaska, kind of the same type of deal. Saw him get up there and he's like 20 to 25 pounds lighter. She's in charge of all that shit. Yep. And it's like, well, if that ends up working and we're going to see these guys play more efficiently and more effectively at this smaller weight, and she's the one in charge of making all that happen, we probably screwed the pooch on not putting her on our list.
Well, we saw it on one of those Chasing 3 episodes, the one where they really focused on Nash Hutmaker.
Yeah.
Where she was very integral on this is what you need to eat to lose that weight to go wrestle.
This is exactly what you got to do.
And they put him on that plan and everything worked the way that it.
Here's your 4 meals instead of your 8 meals.
Yeah.
Calm down, Nash.
I will say as far as
cut back on his seal intake.
Yeah, Jesus. Less penguins.
Talking about her, because typically the people that are on this list are just coaches, basically on the field, coaches and players.
Yeah.
If you want to go extreme off the field, bring up her. One of my buddies also on his list, the number one person on his list, he put the 1890 Collective. So,
oh Jesus,
I at least will understand that concept that they are also very important.
Were you like, go fuck yourself, Matt Davison?
I say that kind of in my sleep.
Jed loves Matt Davison.
Nope,
I don't know if you know that or not.
Nope.
Couldn't even let me get the whole thing out.
He's got a picture of him on his wall.
Yeah, with a bunch of holes.
Yeah, he
in
throws
it.
darts at it.
Yeah.
Throws darts at it and uses it to wipe his ass.
Right next to the picture. Right next to the picture.
Hey man, I don't know what he does in his own time.
You want me to send you pictures?
Nope. Hell no.
Definitely not
Hell
our
no.
copies.
Jesus. Let's jump into the list
Quickly.
Coming in at number 50, you probably already guessed who we're talking about, Mr. Coach Corey Campbell. I think this one kind of speaks for itself because, like what we just talked about, he is everything from the top down when it comes to the strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
That includes all the sports science stuff we're doing. Real quick background on him. This is his second season at Nebraska. Prior to this, he was with the Panthers with Rhule out there. He was the assistant strength and conditioning coordinator coach out there. Prior to that, he was with Rhule at stops at Baylor. He had gotten his start out in Cincinnati in 2016 on the coaching side of things. But he spent a couple years in the NFL, not really successful years whatsoever. I don't think he really saw the field, but he spent 4 years at Georgia.
Yep.
2010 to 2013.
He actually was on the team when we played against them in back-to-back bowl games.
Yes.
He didn't play. He didn't see the field, but he was a fullback.
He was too busy getting shredded.
Well, he was a fullback. That's why he doesn't have a neck. And he was a fullback when fullbacks were fullbacks.
Yes.
Not tight ends who lined up weird.
Yep.
There's so much that could be said about Corey Campbell, but I think the biggest thing that I would say about him is just buy-in. He has this team bought in on their strength and conditioning program. Different than we've seen under anybody, especially since the ice cream eater Mike Riley came along. That's my thoughts.
My biggest thing about going along with the buy-in about Corey Campbell and what he's been able to do in the year and a half that he's been here is, of course, it's football. We all have injuries. But one thing that we haven't seen in a year and a half is those stupid little muscle nagging injuries that used to plague us for weeks.
You better knock on some wood right now.
I know.
You don't need to see that shit start to come up.
But like all of those little nagging things, like all of a sudden everybody's got turf toe or some sort of a hamstring, and like you get 7 people that are on the injured list that with the same injury, and it's like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah,
you're not seeing that right now.
That's a super good point, and I hadn't really thought about that. I wonder. This sounds shitty to say.
Uh-oh.
But I wonder how much of that is just desire to play.
I think it more goes into what you said, the buy-in of the players to focus on, we brought up Miss Kristen. Focus on not just the strength and conditioning in the weight room and everything else, and the buy-in in that, but the buy-in of what to eat, when to eat, how much to eat, all that stuff.
How much to sleep.
Yes.
Like they track literally everything. They all wear, I think they all wear a Woot, and they have to hit certain numbers. Like that's all part of the points programs that they have going on a daily basis. But what I mean really is more just along the lines of like, there's certain injuries that might get reported and sound serious, but there's a lot of those injuries that, especially on the pro side of things in the NFL, you just play through that shit. And a team in the past that might not have been fully bought in because you weren't seeing a coach that was fully bought in, or you didn't believe in, the fact that you had your offensive coordinator or your O-line coach fighting openly in public with your head coach, things like that. Like, all of a sudden, those tiny little nagging injuries that might not really be necessary to sit out. Ah, shit, coach, I can't go this week.
Yeah.
I wonder how different that is. Like, if maybe we just don't hear about those now because there's so much desire to get on the field and prove yourself. I don't know if that's a thing or not. Like, I'm just guessing.
There was a stretch a handful of years ago when I don't remember what the name of that injury was, when a bunch of people had that groin injury where it was just kind of, I don't remember what it was, but there was like 6 or 7 guys that had the exact same groin injury. And it's like,
it was a broken dick.
What?
Coach, my dick hurts. Sprained my labia.
But again, we don't see that right now.
No, we don't.
Like,
that's a really good point I hadn't thought about at all.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
You have any thoughts on Corey Campbell?
He's a great number 50.
He is. It's a great way to start this list.
It is a great way to start this list.
Look, if our number 50 is that good, I'm excited about the whole list.
Yes. Coming in at number 49, we've got Jeremiah Charles. Jeremiah Charles is a redshirt freshman out of Arlington, Texas. He's a defensive back. He is 6 foot tall, 160 pounds.
I think he's bigger than that right now.
I think so too.
I think number 50's got him a little bigger than that right now.
I remember when I was going through some of these guys and I was looking at their bios and, all that, their measurements and stuff. And it's like, there's no way this guy weighs this much. And like, even the Ramir Johnson, I think he's listed at like 185. It's like, he's bigger than 185 right now.
Especially now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
This offseason, they've beefed him up.
Yeah.
He, last year coming into the season, Gabe Ervin looked like the only giant dude in the running backs room.
Yeah.
Now they all look that way. Even Emmett Johnson looks like he's put on 15 or 20 pounds.
Yeah, but I'm so excited about Jeremiah Charles actually getting a shot this year. I'm not saying that he should have gotten a shot last year because he's super raw. He
redshirted last year.
Yes. No, but I mean, like, he also only played 1 year of high school football.
Yeah.
So, like, again, super raw, just like a Jalen Lloyd, only played 1 year of high school football. Super raw. He's the athletic freak. He's the guy that when Rhule and Cooper went down to visit a few players at Martin when Wager was the coach at our former tight ends coach was the coach down there.
That drunk.
And he went, they were at a basketball game looking at a couple players, and when Jeremiah Charles was going bonkers and stuff.
That's the story.
And Matt Rhule was like, hey, Coop, you see that?
Takes
he's like,
his iPad
I'm already
and goes
on it.
out.
Like,
he's like, yep, I'm on this. Offer this kid now.
Yeah. And so, like, he's just an athletic freak. He came in as a wide receiver. He's moving to the defensive position. One of the things about how you talked about buy-in with Corey Campbell, the dedication that he has to get better and to be able to be better just as an athlete in and of itself. So his senior year at Martin High School, he finished second in the 6A Texas State Championship in track and field in the triple jump with a jump of 49 feet 2.5 inches. 1 year later, he competed in the Big Ten Indoor Track and Field Championships. He finished 6th in the Big Ten with a jump of 50 feet 6 3/4 inches. That is almost 1.5 feet farther in just a year.
It's like my whole dick.
Times how many?
Aggressive joke to throw in there.
I couldn't even get it out of my mouth before I started laughing.
That's what she said.
Oh, God. No, that's impressive. He's another one of those guys that I think it's really cool that they are like encouraging them to compete in an additional sport. Yeah. If you're going to go find a guy based on playing another sport, you should be able to let him keep going.
Absolutely.
And it's another way for them to keep honing in their craft, keep working. It's mostly.
Well, it's also one of the enticements to get him here.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to get a pull a guy in like that, but also you're going to get to see. And this is also something I think that they really worked on with Hutmaker is, hey, we want you to go wrestle. We want you to go compete in track, but you also need to keep your body in football shape, which I think that's something I don't remember if it was on one of the Chasing Threes or if it was on something else I saw, but Jalen Lloyd kind of talked about that. Because no, that's not who I'm talking about. Is that the other guy who competed that, he was like a 100-meter guy?
Yeah, that was Lloyd.
Yeah, that was Lloyd. Okay. Because he's from Westside, right?
Yep.
Okay, yes. His times were down just a smidge, but he also said, like, I'm competing as a track athlete as a football player, not the other way around. Like, and so I think that's it speaks to their discipline, and it's just keeping them in great shape all year round. Anything else on Jamal Charles?
Super athletic DB with some decent hands. We get some picks.
Get some picks.
And he's going to get a big chance with Bly Hill being injured.
Yeah, there's going to be a big opening there for him.
Yeah, he was already right on that cusp as far as a possible guy to play the other side of the defense. But with Bly Hill,
in the only projected depth charts that are out there, he was listed as CB22.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was going to get a shot one way or the other. Now he might get a shot to start at the beginning of the season. Who knows? Coming up at number 48, we've got Mr. Riley Van Poppel, a sophomore out of Argyle, Texas. He is listed at 6'5", 275, defensive lineman. When I brought him up earlier today, I wasn't really thinking about the fact that he plays more on the outside. For some reason, I thought he was more of a backup for Ty and Nash.
Yep.
Next up at number 48, we've got Riley Van Poppel. Riley is a sophomore out of Argyle, Texas. He's currently listed at 6'5", 275, D lineman. I know that when you and I talked about him earlier, I kind of was thinking of him more as a backup to Nash and Ty on the inside. But you were saying he'd played more outside, and I hadn't really remembered that. Played more outside last year, and he's going to be more of one of those just standard rotation edge guys.
Yeah, he was in mostly on running plays for the defense. He appeared in 11 of the 12 games. I'm not going to sit here and say that he was a standout by any means, but if you're a true freshman and you're coming in and you're part of the rotation,
it's another one of those guys that just forced himself, was undeniable, forced himself on the field last year.
Yeah. His last 2 years in high school, he came into Nebraska as a top 25 defensive line recruit. In his last 2 years of high school, he had 17 sacks and 31 tackles for loss as a junior and a senior combined. He's, like you just said, he's one of those guys that they just could not keep off the field.
Yeah.
So he saw some playing time. I think he's only going to get better from there, seeing more of the rotation. And it doesn't hurt that, I'm the old guy in the room, so I'm going to bring up his dad, who was an 11-year MLB pitcher, Todd Van Poppel. So he's got good athletic stock.
Yeah, for any of you MLB guys out there, played 359 games, made 98 starts in his MLB career.
There are some people that say, "Oh, he sucked." Well, cool. He played 11 fucking years.
He was still in the major leagues.
Yeah, for 11 years.
Back when pitchers weren't pussies. No, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Coming in at number 47, we've got Evan Cooper. Coop, assistant coach, secondaries, and defensive passing game coordinator. He's also the kind of go-to guru for that, as we already mentioned, kind of the in-depth talent evaluation, kind of uncovering those hidden gems.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's the Swiss Army knife of the recruiting world for Rhule. And it makes sense because prior to coming to Nebraska, he really didn't work that much as an assistant coach. He was in player development and player, recognition, evaluation. With Carolina on Rhule staff, he was there for all 3 years, serving as the director of player evaluation. Prior to that, he was at Baylor with Rhule. He's been at Baylor or been with Rhule every step of the way for the last 12 seasons, and he played for him at Temple.
He's basically the ultimate Matt Rhule guy.
Yeah, you want to talk about being bought in? Evan Cooper.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
He bought in so deep, he can't get out.
Yeah.
That's what I think
like
is
a time
interesting. That's what I think is interesting. The most interesting about him is the fact that this is his first time getting a coaching spot. And I was actually wondering this myself this morning when I was really thinking through the DBs and the whole Ethan Nation situation and where we are. We felt strong about that group and strong about that recruiting class this year. But now that you lose Bly Hill and you lose Ethan Nation, all of a sudden it seems like it's a super, super inexperienced, don't know that much about him group. And so I wonder to myself if the DBs really struggle for a second year in a row, because if you're going to point to anything struggling on the defense last year, which is a hard thing to point at because the defense was great, but it was the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to point to anything on that in and it ultimately falls on the coach. You have a second year of struggling with that. Yes, you've got some holes that happen due to things that are probably out of our control. But as you start to get looked at as more of a, hey, man, you're a great recruiter, but I don't know about this coaching thing. I don't know.
He is got his work cut out for him this year.
Yeah.
23 guys in the defensive back room. 16 of them are either true freshmen or redshirt freshmen.
That's a fucking insane number.
Like and of course we've got the top guys of Hill, Singleton, Marcus Buford, and Gifford. But what do we have after that? Like, it's very top heavy. But after that, what Coach Cooper is able to do with this defensive back room, again, switching a guy like Jeremiah Charles over to defense and the development that he's going to have with somebody like him, he's the guy that kind of has the most on his shoulders to. I mean, you're right as far as, they were the quote unquote weakness probably of the defense, if there was one. Again, we're not crushing that, but I'm not going to sit here and say that his job's on the line, but by any means with any.
I'm not saying he's on the line. Yeah. He's not on the hot seat by any means. I think his seat gets a little warm in the assistant coach's spot.
Yeah,
not necessarily that Rhule would get rid of him, because I think if anything, you move him back to a player personnel guy if he's not going to work out as DB's coach, especially with the new. You can have a bazillion coaches starting whenever that happens this year. If they need to go find a new DB's coach, it's not like he's going to get kicked out. That's not going to happen. Matt?
He had the 9th best DBs ranked nationally last year. I think he's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the weird thing. Yeah.
Limited opponents to 6.1 yards per attempt.
Yeah,
that's wild.
We're sitting here saying how they were the weakness of the defense, but
they were.
They were also really good.
Yeah.
Or at least statistically.
To play devil's advocate, we also didn't play hardly any offenses.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Who knows?
Again, statistically,
the other 8 were all also in the Big Ten. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. Yep. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Coming in at number 46, we've got Mr. Vincent Shavers Jr., true freshman out of Miami, Florida, coming in at 6'1", 205 pounds, listed at linebacker. He has made waves. Mm-hmm. We heard his name out of so many people's mouths at the podium this spring. He sounds like, looks like, seems like that Cam Lenhart, Prince Will, Riley Van Poppel, those different true freshmen last year that were totally undeniable and made themselves known.
Yep.
But he's being talked about even earlier than those guys were last year.
Yeah. I am super excited about somebody like Vincent Shavers, because it's one thing to have a true freshman come in and dominate as a true freshman on the field during the season, but to basically come in early and almost I'm not going to say he dominated through spring practice, but make your presence felt the way Vincent Shavers was able to do this last spring as an early enrollee. Big upside with this guy.
Oh yeah.
Super excited.
I'm super excited. Matt?
170 tackles in his career, 30 tackles for loss, 20 sacks. Man's going to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna eat big. Speaking of a guy who eats big, maybe not as big as he used to, because I think he's trimmed down just a smidge. But coming in at number 45, we've got Elijah Judy out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is 280 pounds, 6'3", junior, defensive line. Another guy that I thought was going to be playing interior D-line that they've talked about, or at least they talked about in the spring. He trimmed down a little bit, and he's been playing outside.
I mean, he's going to play a little bit of both.
Good rotational piece.
Yes. The one interesting thing with him is that I was looking at some stuff, and he played in 11 of the 12 games, and 2/3 of his snaps on defense were on passing downs, as far as passing packages for the defense. Sure. So he's much more of a passing guy, and of the guys that had less than 200 snaps on defense, he was second on quarterback pressures according to Pro Football Focus for Nebraska.
He was a super high-end recruit at Texas A&M.
Big time.
And it was one of the earlier big wins for Rhule's staff when they got here to bring him in. Mm-hmm. He was actually If you recall, he was kind of the reason that a lot of people thought we were going to get the D-line coordinator for
Texas
from
A&M.
Texas A&M.
He went to Syracuse.
I was going to say, I think he wound up heading to Syracuse, but
with Matt Rhule's buddy, Fran Brown.
Yeah, and I'm not too upset with the guy we got.
Well, he's going to be a defensive coordinator, so you take that job.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
there you go. Matt,
man, it's his time to jump up in his career. We haven't seen the numbers we want from him so far, and he's a junior now. He's got to do it.
He's I don't know that I think he was more highly touted coming out of high school, but he's a lot like what we were saying about Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmaker before last season started, where they need to come out and play the way that they were recruited to play.
Yep.
And they did.
That's super fair.
Elijah Judy, let's go. Like, you now need to start showing why you were a highly touted recruit.
I felt super similarly.
Not that he played terrible last year. That's not
no.
I'm just saying.
He just didn't play that much.
No.
It's not even that he played terrible. It's just his numbers didn't show his play
correct
as much. I want to see more numbers.
Yep.
He in his story at Nebraska so far it's a super similar trajectory and line with MJ Sherman.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy who was a big coup for us to get in here and just didn't do much last year like we expected.
We'll get to MJ Sherman later on, but MJ Sherman did a lot more than what we expected. I don't want to say too much because
I expected more.
I'll say what I want to say when we get to MJ Sherman.
Absolutely. Coming in at number 44, we've got Mr. Rahmir Johnson. Rahmir is out of Harlem, New York. If you haven't caught the latest Chasing 3, you need to. His story and how he came out of Harlem and is so driven to be an inspiration to a community that is not known for producing top-level football players. It's incredible. He's a senior this year. This is his 6th year. He was awarded a medical redshirt last year. Otherwise, he would have been ineligible to play.
Yep.
I think he's bigger than this now. He comes in at 5'10". He's listed at 185. He looks more like a 205 guy now. Yeah, Rahmir is a guy who it seems like he's extremely driven and has done everything right since he got here. He's just caught some unlucky breaks. They've talked a lot about this spring about how they just don't understand how he wasn't on the field more. If you recall, going back to the Scott Frost era, Frost loved him. I'm throwing up air quotes right now. Loved him, talked about him a lot, but for some fucking reason never put him on the field.
Rahmir Johnson is what has been one of my favorite players for, honestly, almost since he got here. I was doing this show with a previous coach or a co-host before we all hooked up, and it was Rahmir Johnson's freshman year, and he was gonna redshirt, and that's perfectly fine in 2019. But man, Scott Frost, Matt Rhule, and his coaching staff has been talking about how they misused Rahmir Johnson the entire time he was here before they got here. And I think that is such a drastic understatement how much they misused Rahmir Johnson, because his freshman year, he played in 4 games. 2 of those games, he had 3 total snaps and didn't touch the ball once. What's
the point?
That's my fucking point.
That's the point.
If you're going to waste one of the 4 games, then at least give him the fucking ball.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I didn't understand anything that Frost did in a general sense, but let's just stick with Rahmir Johnson. He just got so misused the entire time, the first stretch of his career here, and I'm so glad that we finally have a coach that can use a guy like that. I'm glad that he's getting his 6th year to be able to hopefully stay healthy. And
God, I hope he stays healthy.
And show what he can actually do, especially in this offense. I really cannot wait to see what Rahmir Johnson can do.
Do you have any other stats or anything like that on him? I mean, the guy's won almost every award you can win from a leadership and a teammate standpoint since he's been here. It sounds like he absolutely crushes it on the grade side of things.
He just hasn't stayed healthy long enough for really, it looked like he was going to have a really good bounce back season to start last year. I mean, he had a 63-yard kickoff return to start the second half against Minnesota that led to a touchdown. He had 66 rushing yards against Colorado, and then he had the season-ending injury in Game 3.
Yeah.
He had a trajectory going through the 2023 season that this was going to be a good year for him.
It sounds like they want to use him more Swiss Army knife this year.
Yeah, I can't wait. God, please stay healthy. Please.
Matt?
Man's got to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Man's got to stay healthy. Speaking of a healthy man and who's hopefully going to be helping him see the field a little bit more this year, coming up at number 43, we've got E.J. Barthel, coach, assistant coach, running backs coach. He has been somebody that we really haven't talked a lot about since he got here. I mean, the running back room last year was pretty underwhelming, but like we've noted a bazillion times, it was basically made of glass and fell apart in every way it possibly could.
Mm-hmm. He had a tough draw last year with, you're going through spring practice, you're going through fall practice, and you've got guys like Ramir Johnson and Gabe Irvin, these, specifically Gabe Irvin, this giant yoked out, just muscle bound freak of a monster carrying the ball. And then all of a sudden, 3 games into the season, those 2 guys are gone. And you got to throw in a young guy like Emmett Johnson as a redshirt freshman. You do still have Anthony Grant, who had fumble issues the year before. And you have to pivot very quickly with what he was dealt last year. Yeah, it was underwhelming, to say the least, the running game with the running backs. But at the same time, I think him having to pivot the way that he did and still finishing second in the Big Ten. I know some of that is smoke and mirrors with the quarterback that we had running the ball all over the place. Finishing second in the Big Ten in rushing is nothing to sneeze at. So as long as people can stay healthy, I think we can really see what E.J. Barthel is capable of doing.
I think we're also going to get to see more of what he's capable of now that we're going to have a stationary quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to have to actually rely on our running backs to run more.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I think he has the opportunity to have a great year.
Yes.
He's one of the guys that I think kind of just fits that mold that Rhule tongue twister, fits the mold that Rhule loves to build his coaches out of and his assistants out of, and that's hey, you started basically as a recruiter. He's got kind of a similar background to what Coop has, and that he was a director of player personnel. He had his stop at Temple with Rhule there, and then he went to Penn State. Jed will say a bazillion times over, James Franklin's an amazing recruiter, but can't coach on Saturdays.
Sunday through Friday, coach.
But when you're a guy, I'm pretty sure that first year for Franklin was 2017, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember.
16 or 17.
Something like that, yeah.
But being able to learn from a guy like that and be in a major recruiting coordinator position like that, that's got to be huge. And I don't think his recruiting prowess has been talked about enough, but the Dowdell thing was a big win for Nebraska this offseason. I'm excited to see what the running backs do this year, and I think he's going to get a little more talk and a little more airtime.
Well, and I agree. And for instance, like last year, Gabe Irvin only played in 3 games. He finished the season 4th in rushing. Like, that shows the lack of depth after the top 2 go down, what we had to work with last year.
Well, it's better this year, period.
Yes.
It's better this year.
I'm not going to completely crush E.J. Barthel for last year because of the hand that was dealt him.
Agreed. Anything else?
Man's got a coach.
Coming in at number 42, Nate Borkacher. I pray to God that I said that right.
Yep.
I think I did.
Yep.
Out of Aurora, Nebraska, a hometown kid. He is a junior this year. Man is 6'5".
He's a giant.
Weighing in at 265. I think maybe that is almost spot on for him based on what he looked like in the spring game.
Yeah.
He's a guy that, him and Fedoni, if I'm not mistaken, came in the same class. Either that or they were one after another highly recruited guy, a homegrown tight end. It seems like that's Nebraska's bread and butter right now is growing tight ends on trees.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a guy that also I would say hasn't necessarily lived up to the hype that he had coming in. But he's looked good so far. He had his moments last year. He was serviceable. He wasn't anything to write home about, but I'm excited to see his growth this year and see that if Thomas Fedoni takes a big step forward, I think he's going to take that same step right behind him.
Yep. Borkacher is much more of a blocking tight end than a pass catching tight end, but he's also sneaky athletic. Like, he's not just a blocking tight end. He's kind of one of those guys that I've said before, kind of gets lost in the shadow of the shine of the freak athletes as far as Thomas Fedoni and Carter Nelson. Those are the shiny toys that stand on the top of the shelf while Nate Borgature is just on those middle shells like, hey, I'm pretty fucking good too. Like,
yeah,
I really like Nate Borgature and I've talked about this before with Marcus Satterfield moving to the tight ends coach. I think having the offensive coordinator, we kind of saw that on the 3rd episode of the Chasing 3, where they were talking about Marcus Satterfield coaching the tight ends and how much that can kind of change his play calling and stuff like that. I think that the tight ends, and I know we've said this for years, give the ball to the tight ends more, and it never fucking happens here at Nebraska, even though we have great players. But I think having the offensive coordinator, or at least it'll be interesting to see if the tight ends get more involved, having the offensive coordinator coach tight ends.
I'm with you 100% on that. He's a guy that, to me, they've talked a lot about this year, the fact that we basically lost both of the fullbacks we had on the roster last year, and we should see the tight end used a little bit more like it is in the NFL at that fullback
like
position.
The H-back.
Yeah,
type stuff. Yeah.
Do you think that's more his role there as a tight end on this team because of the fact that he's so much more proficient at blocking?
I think it's going to be him and Lindenmeyer. We saw Lindenmeyer do that quite a bit. One of the other tight ends. He came in kind of as filling that role as kind of the H-back, fullback type stuff. So yeah, probably.
Oh, especially in the RPO game, it's going to be pretty strong this year. I think that's going to be necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Matt?
Like, you can't argue. He touched the ball 6 times, and he averaged over 10 yards every time he touched the ball. Just give him the ball more.
Mm-hmm.
Give him the ball. Like we've talked about with every single wide receiver, anybody that's going to catch a ball this year, do we really know what they were supposed to look like last year?
Yeah.
Based on the quarterback play we had. Not trying to keep picking on Harburg, but if we couldn't get them the ball, how the fuck are we supposed to know what they were supposed to do?
It was the offense we had, not necessarily just the quarterback. Obviously, the quarterback runs the offense, but the offense that we had, yeah, the wide receiver numbers didn't look great, but was it because they weren't that great, or was it because the offense sucked?
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. In at number 41, we've got Deshaun Singleton, a guy that I am personally super excited about this year. Out of Amite, Louisiana. He is a senior. I think he's a 5th-year guy. He is 6'3", 205 pounds listed. I think that that's about accurate for him, especially based on the position he's going to play. So he's a guy that I'm very, very excited about. We were all hopeful that we were going to see a lot out of him last year, and kind of forgot about him because there was so much other excitement going on last year. He's kind of like adding a transfer portal type guy that's a plug and play, should come in and make an immediate impact this year.
Yeah, he was going into the season last year. He was kind of one of those guys that everybody wanted to ball out, playing on the other side of Quentin Newsome. That was kind of the question mark on who's playing the other side of Quentin Newsome. And everybody's like, "Oh, Deshaun Singleton, cool, we're good." Like, I'm satisfied with that. And he came out, and then
what happened to him again? I don't remember.
I think it was, but he coming off the injury, I fully expect him to be good to go, and I am just really excited for him.
He was a full go in spring, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he was. Matt, what you got?
Outside of getting injured, he was voted as one of the toughest players on the team last year. Stays healthy, he's going to eat.
And he also got one of the single digits last year going into the year. So
single digit for Singleton.
He's clearly respected amongst the team. Yeah, that was.
And this may be the most unbelievable night in Cornhusker football history.